In Dynasty Fantasy Football, we're always talking about buying low on players. We always want to get them at their lowest possible point so that they can accumulate value and pay us dividends as Dynasty Fantasy Football managers. But for me, sometimes it's important to know when to buy high on players as well. There's a guy who was just traded to the Cleveland Browns from the New York Jets named Elijah Moore, who I'm absolutely buying high on right now. The Browns sent away for Elijah Moore, giving up pick number 42 in exchange for Elijah Moore and pick number 74. So they essentially move down from the second round to the third round and pick up Elijah Moore in the process. And here are the facts of this situation that make me so excited for Elijah Moore's outlook. Fact number one, Elijah Moore is a great receiver. And I had a first round grade on him coming out 2021 draft. He was my wide receiver 4 in the class, just behind Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Waddle. For me, he comped very favorably to Tyler Lockett. And in fact, Elijah Moore was my comparison for Jahan Dotson in last year's draft when he was coming out. Elijah Moore does everything well. He's a smart route runner. He's a great athlete. He has 4.3 speed. He has inside-out versatility, and he has tremendous hands. You guys can see his 2021 reception perception marks on the screen right now. This got us very excited to see what he could do in his second year. And even though his second year didn't go as planned, which I'll get to in a minute, he still posted great numbers, according to Matt Harmon, in terms of his reception perception ability to break away against man coverage. And that showed in his 2022 reception profile. As a rookie, there was a stretch of games that we all remember with Mike White and Joe Flacco where he posted a top 3 fantasy points per game finish at the wide receiver position from week 7 to 13, which ended his season eventually when he suffered a quad injury. He was the wide receiver 28 in points per game on the entirety of his rookie season, despite seeing 70% of the snaps only just 7 times over the course of that year. He also posted 1.75 yards per route run and a PFF receiving grade of 73.8. So he showed us a very promising rookie season despite dealing with injuries. He came into the rookie season injured. He left his rookie season injured. And even still, he was able to overcome poor quarterback play and the fact that he was dealing with injuries. Now we get into fact number 2, which is that Elijah Moore was in the doghouse in 2022. I love this dude heading into the 2022, redraft season, but he never truly got going. In the first 3 games with Joe Flacco, he posted 22 targets, 7.3 targets per game over those first 3 weeks. And then we had Zach Wilson come into the fold, who obviously wasn't very good. He took over the offense and the offense slowed down. They pretty much just relied on Breece Hall for the time being. And Elijah Moore became frustrated. There was reports that in like week 6 or week 7, he became pissed off at Matt LaFleur during a practice and stormed off and, cursed him out or whatever. And as a result, we saw his usage and his playing time decrease from a consistent, 85+% of the snaps to down in the 30s and 40s and barely getting any targets from basically week 5 to like week 14 in that period of time. And it's almost eerily similar to what we saw with Brandon Ayuk just 2 years ago when his situation didn't seem to be very promising in San Francisco. But of course, we know Brandon Ayuk had kind of like a breakout season this year. The relationship in New York seemed to be fractured. Apparently, Elijah Moore asked for a trade at the deadline. So for Elijah Moore's sake, there's always going to be this kind of animosity between him and Robert Saleh, even though Matt LaFleur is no longer calling the offense. I don't think Elijah Moore is actually a head case diva type of wide receiver. I think he's very competitive. I think he was just frustrated by the fact that the team clearly knew that Zach Wilson was not the guy. And thankfully, he won't have that problem in Cleveland because he has a quarterback. And fact number 3 is Deshaun Watson is a massive quarterback upgrade to anybody that Elijah Moore has played with. Now, you could argue that if Aaron Rodgers comes into the Jets, which it looks like is going to happen, then you have a discussion point there. But the fact remains that he's still got a quarterback upgrade no matter what. And I know a lot of guys probably don't like Deshaun Watson because of what he did or what he was allegedly doing, but you cannot deny the fact that this guy's a top 5 to 10 quarterback at minimum in the NFL before all that shit started going down in the 2021 season. Deshaun Watson's PFF passing grades by season in 2018, he posted a 13th highest PFF passing grade, 8th highest among quarterbacks in 2019, and then 3rd highest among quarterbacks in 2020. And I'd argue he played like a borderline MVP candidate that year, despite his team being pretty terrible. He's 27 years old and he played 6 games in 2022. Are we really basing that 6-game sample size with new teammates, a new scheme, a new coaching staff, not playing the entire season, coming, being thrown into the fire in week 13 after 2 years of not playing, plus probably a bunch of mental heartache that he had to deal with over those 2 years, whether he's guilty or not? He was elite since the moment he stepped into the NFL. In 2017, he took over the NFL as a rookie. Then he tore his ACL. 2018 was a bounce back year. 2019, he was awesome. 2020, he was unbelievable. So for me, I'm going to trust that Deshaun Watson's an elite quarterback still. I'm not going to base this off of a silly 6-game sample size. And Elijah Moore is a perfect fit for this offense. They have 2 wide receivers on the outside already, Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Both guys are clear outside wide receivers. They just needed a speedy slot receiver, and that is exactly what Elijah Moore brings to the table. And fact number 4 is that the Browns were prioritizing a guy like Elijah Moore and more wide receiver talent in general. This is a blurb from Matthew Berry's tidbits that he picked up at the NFL Scouting Combine. There's 23 facts that he listed in here. I think it's a good read, so you can definitely check it out on NBC Sports. It's totally free to read. He picked up these tidbits at the Scouting Combine, and it's almost dead on, and it pretty much aged perfectly. They wanted to pass the ball more. They were a run-heavy offense for a number of years with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in Stefanski's system, but we saw them shift towards more of a pass-heavy approach when Deshaun Watson came back and was starting to play a little better at the end of the season, and they added a receiver in Elijah Moore to further that notion, and they haven't re-signed their second running back in Kareem Hunt yet. So for me, I read this tidbit, and the source told Matthew Berry that the Browns are really going to open up the offense. They're going to go 5 wide. They're going to pass a lot. It's Deshaun Watson's offense now, not Nick Chubb's offense. They're going to pass a lot more than people expect. All this stuff it was told to him by whatever source he has, not to mention as good as Aaron Rodgers would have been for Elijah Moore had he stayed in the New York system. He has to compete for targets with Garrett Wilson, who's a young ascending wide receiver who could potentially be the next elite wide receiver in the NFL. Deshaun Watson is young. He's going to be there for a number of years. Aaron Rodgers was probably a 1 or 2 year Band-Aid there in New York, and then we're back to the same conundrum with Elijah Moore and the Jets quarterback situation. And Amari Cooper won't be around forever, right? He's getting up there in age. He had a breakout season, I would say, or a great season last year, but it's possible that he regresses again next year. I would not be shocked if Elijah Moore and Deshaun Watson becomes an awesome connection for the next, 5-10 years to come. So I've established right now that I've already been willing to buy high on Elijah Moore. Ideally, a couple months ago, you would have bought him when he wasn't very expensive at all. You probably could have gotten him for a late 2nd-round pick or potentially even less during the season when he was in the doghouse. But I would feel comfortable at this point in time giving up an early 2nd for Elijah Moore. And to me, that's buying high on him because he was going for about a mid to late 2nd before this news. And he definitely went up in value, and people know that. So I'm sure a lot of you guys in your dynasty leagues, whoever has Elijah Moore on their roster, probably threw him on the trade block, and they're willing to sell him because they think that's a sell high, right? They hear, breaking news, and I'm going to sell high on Elijah Moore and cash out and re-roll it into an early 2nd-round pick. For me, I practice what I preach. So I am not telling you this just saying, oh, go buy Elijah Moore. No, I already did this. I traded away the 202 in one of my leagues for Elijah Moore. And in my mind, the reason I traded the 202, because I had a number of 2nd-round picks. I had a late 1st-round pick in that league. In my mind, once we get to the early 2nd round, the 202, 203 type of area, which is the pick that I think you should trade for a guy like Elijah Moore, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet, those guys will all be gone. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, those guys will all be gone. JSN, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, those guys will all be gone, and that's only up to the 110, right? So that brings us there. Whatever running backs get good draft capital, good landing spots might go before that 202. Whatever of the tier 2 wide receivers, Josh Downs, Jalen Hyatt, Zay Flowers types get great draft capital and landing spots will probably go higher than that as well. So for me, you're looking at like poor landing spot, Jalen Hyatt, or like day 3 running back in a decent situation at 202. And for me, I will take the guy that is, just 4 months older than Zay Flowers, who's in this draft class, who's already shown that he can play at the NFL level, or you're looking at a tight end or something like that at that point in time. So for me, I am all the way back in on Elijah Moore. I tweeted this trade out yesterday, and I'm going to buy high on him right now. I sent out offers on Elijah Moore in pretty much every league that I don't have him. Go buy Elijah Moore and thank me later, because Deshaun Watson's a great quarterback. He's a great wide receiver. He fits the offense. They want to pass more. The stars are aligning for Elijah Moore to finally break out and be this year's version of what we saw Brandon Ayuk do last year. So definitely go buy Elijah Moore. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. If you want access to my rankings, bonus content, personalized advice, and the rankings, bonus content, and personalized advice of Flock Fantasy, of Fantasy Endgame and Dynasty Land and Fantasy Land, go check out flockfantasy.com and use the promo code FSE when you sign up for 30% off all of the packages and save basically 6 months for free when you sign up annually. So definitely check that out if it interests you. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.